And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for taking this Monday afternoon drive with me here in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. So today marks the 12th entry in our continuing series of Halloween horror. And today will be a bit of a dual episode, not really a dual celebration. But today is Joaquin Phoenix's 49th birthday, and he's been in the news lately, not for great reasons. Joker Part 2 bombed big time, and most people who saw it were scratching their head. I mean, did you think they were joking when they said it was a musical? You know, did you think they were just kidding around? I've never heard of anybody making jokes if something is an action thriller and you say, well, it's a musical, it's a fucking musical. And then he had unfortunately, the Todd Haynes project. Todd Haynes, a fantastic filmmaker, and Christine Vachon, a great, I believe, Oscar-winning producer. Joaquin Phoenix had brought a project to them, and he backed out too late. And when I say too late, meaning that everyone is committed and you have a movie ready to begin shooting, you have locations set to go, you have entire crews and craftspeople ready to go, and then you pull up your stakes and run with less than, 10 days to go? Can't do it, and it doesn't look good for him. Having said that, today is Joaquin Phoenix's 49th birthday. And even though he won the Best Actor Oscar for Joker, and certainly from the craftsmanship standpoint, from an artistic thespian standpoint, he is one of the most talented actors of his generation. And I would say he's his generation's Dustin Hoffman. And by that, I mean, he is incredibly resourceful. He has the ability to put on a lot of different hats. He can be funny. He can be terrifying. He's just a tremendous talent, regardless of things I, just as a fan might take issue with. There's no denying his talent. And when he's committed to a role and he gives it everything he's got. But the movie I want to talk about today is a film that's now more than 22 years old, and it's M. Night Shyamalan's Signs. Now, M. Night Shyamalan is somebody whose talent is off the charts. He's a great writer, and he's a really solid filmmaker. I mean, he's more than solid. He has so much natural talent. There's a reason why many people said that he was going to be the next Spielberg, because of his shot-making ability, the way that the way that he would instantly calculate the best way to film a particular scene, the fact that he was able to get so much out of Bruce Willis in the sorts of roles you wouldn't necessarily expect Bruce to hit a home run in, and a great talent. But Shyamalan's career has been, we can admit, it's been very up and down. And even his last film, which was successful at the box office, Trap, with Josh Hartnett, a lot of people said this is a step backward. And The Village was bad. That was the film that he made after Signs. And then Lady in the Water most people felt was even worse. So unfortunately, he has had this kind of checkered career, but there is no denying his incredible capacity to not only craft good stories, compelling stories, often with twists that we don't see coming, but that he's able to, as he did in The Sixth Sense, and what I believe he did to even greater effect in Signs, and Signs more so, he's able to scare audiences while really tugging at the heartstrings. And that's not normally a combination that I would expect to see and experience. And Sixth Sense has its moments of emotion, but it's a movie that I like and don't love. And I was kind of fooled by the big twist when I first saw it in theaters. People were going crazy. It was the biggest twist of a major film since The Crying Game, which was about 5.5 or 6 years before The Sixth Sense. And, Crying Game, completely different kind of movie. But that was one where people were trying to figure out, well, what's the big twist? What's the secret? They didn't even call it a twist. The secret of The Crying Game. The joke was, people would say, you want to hear the secret of The Crying Game? It's overrated. But I happen to love The Crying Game also. Sixth Sense is good. It's not great. Signs, to this day, I believe, is M. Night Shyamalan's finest achievement. The best film he's made. And it does everything right. And one thing that it does right, other than the fact that M. Night, and so he surprised a lot of people that instead of using Bruce again, as he had used Bruce with The Sixth Sense, to not just big box office, but the film was nominated for 8 or 9 Oscars, including Best Picture. But he worked with Bruce then, again, of course, in Unbreakable and that kind of series going forward, Glass and Split. But he went with Mel. And Mel, at that juncture, was not he may have been a polarizing figure within Hollywood, but just in a general sense, he was not the polarizing figure he would later become with the arrest and some of the things that he said. The thing is, though, Mel Gibson is also a prodigiously talented guy. He's not just a terrific actor. He's just a master filmmaker. And it doesn't make sense that he's as good a filmmaker as he is, as we've seen with Hacksaw Ridge and obviously Braveheart, in which he won Oscars for director and picture. But he was just an actor in Signs. And I don't know if it was director notes. I have no idea. But Mel does something in Signs that is not easy to do. When you are an established commodity, as he was, he dialed back not only his screen persona, but some of the kind of acting tics that he was famous for. And this is not a criticism. This is not in a negative sense. I mean, Clint Eastwood had certain stares that he was famous for. This is standard stuff. Mel figured out how to stay away from certain things that he was probably doing unconsciously. I don't know how he did it or how Shyamalan, maybe they did a lot of takes with certain scenes, but Mel gives a really wonderful performance in Signs as a father of two. And I think, was it Kieran Culkin or was it Rory Culkin? I forgot which of Macaulay's younger brothers is in it. But a very young Abigail Breslin is just amazing. And Joaquin plays Mel's brother in the film. Now, they don't look anything alike, but they're both athletic and they have great chemistry. They look nothing alike, but they feel like they could be brothers. And Joaquin has moments in this film where, like, people wonder, how did Joaquin even get to a point in his, in Hollywood, in his career, where he's able to win an Oscar, for example, for Joker and some of the other great work that he's done. You look at what he does in Signs. He has such a natural quality to him, but he plays the hell out of a role that in theory could be a throwaway, because it is, after all, Mel's movie. Mel is the star and the kids are in support of him. But Joaquin takes this character who could be a cliche. He was a former baseball star who didn't really have the career. We're led to believe that he had the talent to be a major leaguer, but he was uncompromising and unwilling to make adjustments to his game. And he ended up just having the minor league home run record. And, now he's just a guy who lives with his brother and the kids and helps out because they absorb significant tragedy. Signs does things that you wouldn't expect to work as well as they do. And this was a film that was an enormous box office success when it landed, I think, summer of 2002. And it didn't get quite as good reviews as The Sixth Sense. Many critics took issue with certain aspects of the story, but essentially, it's M. Night Shyamalan's interpretation of War of the Worlds. That's what this is. It's his interpretation of H.G. Wells' novel. Now, the Steven Spielberg, Tom Cruise film, despite being bigger budgeted, more modernized, that's a closer, at least conceptually, it's a closer adaptation. So there's certain things where you say, well, this is bullshit. This alien race is so much more advanced than us, and they fall victim to something that is just fucking stupid. Well, yeah, I go with it. I got it. I roll with that. The movie, though, came out very clearly, was at least somewhat in production and in post-production after 9/11. And there are things in this film that hit harder. And they hit audiences harder at the time because of the memories that had been scarred in our collective consciousness from that terrible day. And this is not an accident, and it's not pandering, and I'm not saying that M. Night shouldn't have done this or that any filmmaker, well, you really shouldn't do this, because Spielberg in some quarters took criticism for War of the Worlds with the fact that there were images and the kind of horror of the way that Spielberg presented things in such a graphic fashion that you just say to yourself, was it necessary? Well, I thought that it was perfectly fine. He's trying to tell a story, and I didn't see it as being exploitive in that way. And there is a moment in Signs. Basically, it's an alien invasion movie, but it is unlike any other alien invasion movie. Whether you want to talk War of the Worlds, whether you want to talk Independence Day, whether you want to talk The Arrival, the Charlie Sheen film that was released just before Independence Day, or whether you want to talk Leave the World Behind, which, I don't know, is that an alien invasion movie? Is that a terrorist movie? But Signs does it differently than any other of those films because it stays so focused on just the family, just Mel and Joaquin and the kids. And there are enormous stretches of the film where they appear to be the only 4 people in the world. And I mean that figuratively, not literally. We know that there's other stuff going on out there. But there is that moment in this film where Joaquin is beyond freaked out because the aliens have used these, these signs, these kind of crop circles. They seem to have used them to geometrically position landings. And so you start thinking, this feels like this is going to be a takeover, like we're all going to die. But then you say, well, maybe not. Maybe something else. Maybe it'll be something good. And there's the kind of struggle between Mel's character of Graham, which is he was a reverend, a father, pastor, preacher. He's somebody who is a man of the cloth. And after his wife died, such a needless and tragic death, he's turned his back on it. And he no longer is a believer. He is now cynical and pessimistic, and he is angry. Whereas Joaquin's character is still essentially hopeful. And the kind of quiet struggle, the dynamic between the two brothers, is really well played by both actors, where Mel gives his worldview, actually more than one, and Joaquin gives his. You say to yourself, are you the kind of person that believes that there are signs, that there are things that happen in our lives for a particular reason that does not seem like a particular reason and doesn't seem like something that's going to pay off because it feels like nothing? You could be that kind of person that does see signs, or you could be the kind of person, as Mel's character has become, that realizes that's fucking bullshit. We are all on our own. No one is looking out for us. No one is going to save us. And there are no signs. Nothing that happened 15 years ago on a random night at 7 p.m. that is going to save us 2 weeks from now. Doesn't exist. Joaquin has this moment. It's an incredible actor moment, but this is the one moment that does speak to a 9/11, a post 9/11 America. And it could be exploitive, but it's not because of the way that it's presented. And it is within this story. It has nothing to do with a terrorist attack. It has to do with an alien invasion. And so Joaquin is watching TV, and we've gotten information that the aliens have landed. They have these crazy spaceships, and they've landed, and it is video from a children's birthday party. And Joaquin is watching this footage, just random, news footage. And when he sees an alien, he jumps out of his chair and starts to shake. His face gets all screwed up, and he is pointing and he is shaking. And it is something that, unfortunately, I can identify with, and many of us can identify with that reaction. He is seeing something that he should never have seen. This is not something that should have ever taken place, but it's happening. And I remember, and so many of us remember, when we first saw the images from 9/11, it was a syntax error. This is because, at least in my case, I could not process what I was seeing because I had no frame of reference to even comprehend. Yes, 1 + 1 = 2, I know that. But there are certain things that you go your life, decades. In my case, I was in my middle 20s. There are things that you cannot prepare to see. And I saw it. and we saw it, and hopefully we didn't lose anyone. But in this moment, what Joaquin does, the jump out of the chair, the freak out, it is maybe the best film acting of his career. I mean, it's better than anything he does in Joker, as much as I love his performance there. So Signs is a suspense film, but it follows the kind of phases of a horror film where creepy things are happening. And in this particular case, there are a lot of people that aren't on board with what we know to be taking place. And there are always going to be naysayers. You know, it's kind of a humorous, a bookstore owner is saying, yeah, this is all just so that they can sell more soda. You know, like ridiculous. Now, we know the guy is a clown, but that's how it would really be. You're not going to get everybody in agreement. And in Leave the World Behind, what that film did that was similar to this film, unlike Independence Day, unlike The Arrival with Charlie Sheen, unlike War of the Worlds, hell, unlike Contact with Jodie Foster, which is straight up sci-fi. It's not in any way a horror movie. But the kind of subjective camera where we as the audience only are witness to what the characters that we are following at this particular juncture are seeing. In this movie, it adds to the suspense, it adds to the terror. And Shyamalan is very clever in the way that he films certain spaces. He does it in such a way, he centers certain objects or certain nothings in a way that we are waiting for an attack. And it just shows his natural ability as a filmmaker, that he's looking at something before he decides to shoot it. He's looking at something and he is saying to himself, this is going to work. This is going to be scary. This is going to scare the shit out of the audiences, but in the best possible way. So the other thing with Shyamalan is I never felt that he was pandering or talking down to the audience, but also that he does not hate his audience. I've never felt him come across with contempt, and there have been times where filmmakers appear to have contempt for their viewers. I never gotten that out of him. The story, which is an alien invasion, War of the Worlds narrative, by staying focused on the family and making us care, because they all come across like real people. Abigail is wonderful, and Culkin is really, really solid. He's a kid he's angry that his father has turned his back on faith. It hurt him terribly that his father turned his back on his faith. And there is just a heart-rending moment. I won't spoil for those who haven't seen it. This is a movie you've got to see. Even if you're not a big horror film fan, it is really a great movie. But he has a moment where he more or less wishes that his dad was different. And it hurts him to say it, and he cries, but he wishes his dad was different. And this is something that he would never have said before the mother passed. And Shyamalan also, he's taken some criticism because he typically does a Hitchcock thing and puts himself into his own movies, sometimes just in a quick cameo, as was the case with The Village, but other times he's an actual supporting character in the movie. And in this film, he did take some heat because the character he plays, Ray Reddy, who is a local, who has some kind of connection to the family tragedy. I think that he probably should have cast somebody other than himself, but it's, if you don't know who he is, then it doesn't matter, right? But if you say, oh, look at that, that's the filmmaker, and it can take you out of the fiction. And one thing with Alfred Hitchcock is that he was extremely judicious with his own cameos, as far as he didn't want to ever interfere with the story. So the idea was the movies that were more serious, he would get the cameo out of the way as early as possible so that there was no chance he was going to kind of cock block his own story, because you got Vertigo, for example, and if it's Jimmy Stewart losing his mind and then all of a sudden Alfred Hitchcock pops up and we start laughing, we're taken out of the fiction. So the idea is get the cameo over with as quickly as possible, whether it's with Cary Grant in To Catch a Thief or Rear Window, the very early where he appears in the composer's apartment. Signs is a film which is very well remembered by history, and if anything, if you go on YouTube right now and you check out many movie reactors, checking the film out for the first time. They all love it. And in many cases, number one, they're supposed, like, I don't even know how I haven't seen this movie, but the other thing is, I wasn't expecting a movie that is a horror film to have this much emotion, to make you feel so deeply for the characters. And that's because also the pace that Shyamalan takes his time and does not rush. He doesn't race. He lets the story breathe, and he lets the story build to what feels like a real climax. And, you know, maybe I'm Jewish. I can admit. I was bar mitzvahed. I grew up a certain way, but I have nothing against faith at all. I don't care what your faith is. It doesn't matter to me. If you have it, that is great. And this movie, this is a mild spoiler, this movie argues in favor of having faith. Not in a religious sense. It argues in favor of having faith and believing in something bigger than yourself. It could be religion, but it could also be the New York Yankees. And it might seem old-fashioned and quaint. But there is something to be said for that. And this movie...
In 2 miles, take exit 33 toward Community Drive, Lakeville Road.
Sorry. This movie and its characters have faith. And it works beautifully, because we believe in these people and the situation they're going through. And as the story builds to really an incredible climax, we're with it. And it's hard not to tear up when you get to the final 5 to 10 minutes. It's one emotional climax after another, and none of them feel forced. They all feel earned, and that is really difficult to do. With The Sixth Sense, it just didn't hit me the same way that it did other people. This movie did and does, and I believe that first-time viewers will be shocked how good this movie is. M. Night Shyamalan's summer 2002 runaway box office hit Signs, the 12th entry in our continuing series of Halloween horror, starring Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, Rory Culkin, I think it was Rory. It was either Rory or Kieran. I just have it in my head that it was Rory. And Abigail Breslin, with a terrific supporting performance from, I believe it was Cherry Jones. She's just great. She plays a local sheriff. This has been episode 345 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Monday afternoon here with me in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.